Good evening, Facebook Live. Good evening, YouTube and Twitter, as well as LinkedIn. We are so happy to have you here with us once again. I am Bishop-elect Vanessa M. Brown, and this is Beyond the Gatekeepers. And we're so happy and excited that you've joined us tonight. I'm going to ask everyone to just start telling us where you come from, shout out where you are. Make sure you put it in the chat below. I see people that are already coming in. Again, we appreciate your support, especially those who are here on a weekly basis. Yes, I am happy to see Chuck Hunt here from Monroe, Louisiana. Jerome Abbott is in the house. Our beloved sister Carmen White Janak. She is our cousin. We're so glad. Yes, Natasha from Chicagoland. Glad that you're here. We love you too. I see you, Maya from Harlem. So wonderful. Jerry Williams in North Carolina. I love it. Yes, this is fantastic. I see it. West Virginia is here. Oh, yes. Columbia, Chuck Rose, Dr. Chuck Rose. Thank you, sir, for being here. Columbia, South Carolina. Oh, St. Louis, Missouri is here. Cheryl Robinson Moore. Atlanta is in the house. We're so happy. Yay. Oklahoma City is in the house. LaDonna Clark is here from Oneonta, New York. I know where that is, and it's cold. Yes. Indiana, we're glad that you're here. Tulsa, Oklahoma is in the house. Thank you, Carmen, for reminding me. Again, Chicago, Baltimore, Maryland. I see you here. Yes, this is good. Brooklyn is here. You can't go nowhere without Brooklyn being there. I just want you to know that. Look at here. Charleston, South Carolina, Washington, D.C., South San Francisco, California. All right. I like that. San Diego is here. Boston is here. Philly, my cousin is on. Beverly Scott Hudson. Philly is in the house. Yay. Yes. Caparis Cove, Texas. All right. Dr. Stacy May, New York City is representing. Harlem is here. Toronto is in the house. Garner, North Carolina is in the house. So happy that you are all here and have decided to join in with us. I know that you've been seeing so many things on the news. We're going to get to a lot of those subjects, but we promised you a part 2. And so we want to give that to you tonight. And we're very happy. I see, yes, Beverly Hudson is everywhere. God bless you. Mississippi, Mississippi. Remember that from school. Pete Jr., thank you for joining us. I love that Mississippi is here. Maryland is here. We're so very happy to have all of you. This is so good. Do me a favor. Make sure you share. Share for us. Share for us. Share, share, share. Let folks know on every platform that this conversation is taking place. This is part 2. Let me bring on our guest on tonight, please. I see you, Minister Sandy Hudson. Thank you for coming. Paris, California is here. All right, we have Margaret L. Conley. She's a licensed clinical social worker, motivational speaker, and author. And we have Marlon Millner. He's a scholar and theologian. Please, Margaret and Marlon, welcome our audience on tonight. Let them know that you're here, where you're from, and anything else you want them to know. Let's start with Margaret.
Hey, good evening, everyone. I saw somebody from McDonough, Georgia. I want to call that out.
Yes, you know what? And that's a fake, faithful viewer. Yes.
I would shout them out. So,
yes.
I'm Margaret Conley. I'm from Cartersville, Georgia. So that's why I wanted to shout it out. I'm currently in Smyrna, Georgia. That's where my practice is located. And so just honored to be here, honored to be back on this platform. It's a joy. Y'all are my family. So glad to be here. And happy that everybody wants to participate in the part 2 as we follow up with the sounds of who you had last time. I don't know if I can follow Candace, but we're going to try.
That's good. We appreciate you. And for those of you that might be wondering where Candace is, Candace's grandmother transitioned. And so she transitioned last Wednesday, and the homegoing service was today. And so we certainly send our prayers to Candace. She is beloved among us. And so we want to make sure that we do that. Brother Marlon Millner, tell us about yourself.
Hello. Well, I'm just a brother trying to make $1 out of 15 cents. And it might be about 10 cents today. But we're glad to be here. Was glad to be with you all 2 weeks ago. Love what you're doing. Highly regard our spiritual mother, Bishop Flunder. Anytime I can be in her presence, in person or virtually, it's always a joy. And I'm looking forward to having further conversation on, as you said, with everything in the news, nevertheless, a topic and a film of great importance and sparking important dialogue for the church.
Thank you so very, very much. We're very excited. Somebody said, just so you'll know, Margaret, social workers in the house. Woo, woo. All right. We can't go any further without and we also want to say about Bishop Pearson that he will not be on tonight, and we want to continue to lift him in our prayers. But certainly Bishop Yvette A. Flunder is here. She is the presiding prelate of the Fellowship of Affirming Ministries and the senior pastor of City of Refuge United Church of Christ in Oakland for over 30 years. Bishop Flunder, will you greet our family tonight, and you can also frame the conversation?
Well, of course, you know it is both my joy and privilege to be in the company of these two, and in particular, to be able to have this conversation. My God, today, that's what the old folks would say. My God, today. I know that it's going to be important for us to have the opportunity to once again take a really close look at many of the things that were a part of all of our lives when we were coming along in the context of the church, and are still coming along in the context of the church. But we have found outlets to be able to have a conversation. First of all, to heal our own trauma, because we have it. It is so complicated to listen to continuous teaching and preaching about what we ought not do, only to find out that those closets exist and have existed for years and years and years. For many of our colleagues, it meant an absolute turnabout. And you can't get them to come for anything because they know the story. And for others, we have learned to wear what I call the patina, the outward acceptance of what we know is an inward issue for us in church. And I would like to believe that we have some answers because we are still here, that we do still, in so many ways, love God and our understanding of God. And we enjoy the company in our family of people who know God and love God, and in our communities and understand God perhaps in different ways than we have historically. What a blessing that is, to not be one of the ones who were damaged to the extent to which we never wanted to have anything else to do with church folks. But I'm hoping that we are also the ones who can speak into this atmosphere. I want something better for my children, for my grandchildren, and my children of the flesh and of the spirit. I want something real and authentic for them, not something that is not human, but something real and something authentic. That is my desire. So, my hope this evening is that what we can do is continue to have conversation about how we can help heal trauma, both for ourselves, for our people of faith community, for our young people, because this is a very traumatic world we're in right now. There's a whole lot of stuff being done, and most of the angry stuff that is going on is happening in the name of our God. I listened the other day to the conversations regarding what is happening now in Georgia and the Senate seat in Georgia. And I heard someone say, someone of importance, I don't care what Herschel did. All we want is control of the Senate. And this was someone who says that they have relationship with God. In fact, they're doing it because they have relationship with God. But listen to that. Listen to what that means. It says to me that this church leader is full aware that perhaps it's a lie somewhere, as my grandmother would say, it's a lie somewhere, but who cares if it's a lie? As long as it gives us or brings to us what it is that we desire to have, to put in place and keep in place our power and control. I want to thank you, Bishop-elect Vanessa. We lost you for a minute, so they made me talk a little long, but I see you back. I want to thank you for continuing this conversation tonight. Let's dig a little deeper and talk a little bit more about how we can address church-based trauma and what is it that we regained from the conversation that we had that we can use to help heal. God bless you, and thank you, our beloved, my beloved, for being with us this evening.
So wonderful, Bishop Flunder. Thank you for opening up the conversation and framing it for us. For those that are just coming in, we are talking about Honk for Jesus, Save Your Soul. That is the movie that is still out. You can still watch it. And I believe that it is on Peacock. And you have to pay for it, but it is, to me, a very good movie. And it talks a lot about what our conversation is going to be about tonight. Sterling K. Brown, Regina Hall did an excellent job. A lot of people are very upset and up in arms over this movie. But I think that it is, to what Bishop Flunder just said, we need to talk about it. We need to dig down. We need to drill down. And so I want to start off, because I'm not going to start off from the beginning. This is part 2. So I'm going to start off with questions that we had from the last time that I did not get. And again, we shout out Pensacola, Florida. Thank you for being here. We just want to make sure we are catching up with the saints. So the first question came from Chanel Wilson, and I'm not sure if Chanel is back, but her question is, how do victims of spiritual abuse recover? How do victims of spiritual abuse recover? And I want to start with Margaret L. Conley.
So beautiful question. I think I came in right then last time as that was being addressed. And so I want to speak from a therapeutic standpoint and just say, call it out. You can only reveal, or you can only heal what you have revealed. And it doesn't mean that everybody's going to stand with you when you call it out. They're not going to stand with you. You're going to be like, oh my God, I can't believe you said that. Can't believe you did that. But if you continue to replay it, then you set up that post-traumatic space for it. And then now your body, along with your mind, begins to suffer. So call out what happened to you. It both equal pain. I have to tell people that as a trauma therapist, I can either hold it in my body and allow it to eat me up in totality, or I can call it out and hear that really happened to me. And when I do that, then I can start to process out the trauma versus relive and process back in the trauma and create a world around it that numbs us out. And so you want to announce that is the first step that I believe into healing any type of trauma that has happened to us at all, but especially trauma in church.
Thank you for that, Marlon. Would you like to add something, and then Bishop Flunder?
Yes. I was thinking about that question, and I think I want to call out. I also think we need what has been called healing communities, right? And so we know that because everyone is not going to be with us, we do need some people who are with us, even if the majority are not going to be with us. So we need spaces of care, and we need spaces of refuge, cities of refuge. One of the things I think about, and I don't know if I've ever told Bishop Flunder this, but the very first time I went to City of Refuge, she knows some of the trauma that I've had in my family. And when I was at the church in San Francisco, I was like, what really struck me was like, this is a space that some of the most traumatized members of my family could walk in and be accepted. And I don't know that I'd ever been in a Black church where I actually felt that. I don't know that I'd ever been in a Pentecostal church where I actually felt that. I think there were things that I've dealt with in my family where people have tried to tell their truth and they were maligned, or they're kind of like, all right, baby, we heard, that thing where we kind of affirm, but also then push to the side. But that's not what I felt when I came in that location, with the saints at City of Refuge for the first time. I think that was 2010. And so we need those spaces as well. And then the other thing I would just say is people who choose to remain in the church space need to operate in all the gifts and abilities that they have, and do not let they are not reduced to telling the story of their trauma again and again. They tell that trauma and they are in that healing space precisely so they can move on in the gifts and abilities that they have and be all that those who traumatize them seek to diminish them from being. So,
Bishop?
So this conversation and these responses, of course, bring up for me vignettes in my mind. I'm remembering things and circumstances. And I think one of the things that comes up for me first is, what is the cost to the one who tells their truth? They do need to tell it. But what is it that we can do to build in a way for them to tell it that does not put them in what they think is an even less favorable place than they were before? One of my members, in an open conversation, one of the first long studies that we had at the beginning of our church was about human sexuality from the very beginning. So, well, since this is what we are accused of in the heat of the AIDS epidemic, right? Let's talk about it. Well, and it was the biggest Bible study that we ever had numerically compared to the population of our church. Everybody came. So let's talk about it. And one of my members got up and said, my name is so-and-so and such and such. And the thing I need to say to you is that I was a victim of incest by 6 members of my family over a period of years. Do you remember that, Mama?
Yeah.
Mother's here. 6 people in my family over a period of years. And then the person that said it broke down completely right in the middle of the conversation. I don't think that she anticipated by saying it that she was going to have a break. This is a person that isn't given to breaking down. You may understand. But that day, what we were in that moment was, in our opinion, completely unprepared to say something to her. She told her truth because she felt that she could, and I believe she felt safe to tell it because she told it. That they had names, all 6 of them. But what I think is important to say is that we were not prepared, not because there was judgment for her, but exactly what do we do next? And then we understood, too, what it was that Margaret said a moment ago. We needed to build in something else to be a real catchment for these realities, a different part of ministry that is also ministry, and that has to do with addressing trauma and addiction. Those realities, we had to put something in place because though we were filled with love, we were not prepared in the context of the church for people to just walk up and tell the truth. It's just, can I just say that out loud? We are not prepared in the church for people to walk up and tell the truth. And if we are going to follow this professional advice that we've received tonight, we also need to build in something that catches people when they find the strength to tell the truth. You know, we sing a song that said, where do I go seeking a refuge for my soul? Remember that good old Pentecostal song? Needing a friend to save me at the end. Where do I go but to the Lord, right? And sometimes for people, that means coming to the church. And then they tell their truth. And whether people hate them or love them, because it can be in either one of those realities, they often cannot find in the context of love or hatred what it is that they need in those moments. We learned. And I am not the trauma advice person. Somebody else with the training.
Yes.
I'm their pastor. You understand? But I am not, I can say in a minute, Bishop-elect Vanessa, let me send you.
Yes.
And ask you, would you mind very much having this conversation with so-and-so and such and such? That is a whole department of our ministry now.
Absolutely.
For all of the reasons that we just shared.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Bishop Flunder. Margaret, tell us something about trauma-informed congregations, because that's what we're talking about, trauma-informed congregations. And I see people, giving these workshops and doing different things as we go along. But how can a congregation become a trauma-informed congregation?
So to become a trauma-informed congregation, I'm going to pull on the work of Jessica Young Brown tonight. If nobody's read her work, Making Spaces at the Well, she gives us a spell out of creating a trauma-informed congregation. But one space I want to sit in about her work, outside of creating the space of safety, is moving into presence and persistence. It's hard for us to do that as we create, because I want to be present, but I lean more into persistently telling you, just get the story out so we can move on, because it's now bringing up things inside of me. The presence is where you make, and clinically what you would say, a U-turn, check in on yourself, because guess what's coming up? All the stories, as Bishop said, I have vignettes of stuff that just happened to me just from the snippet of what we talked about. So one, creating that space that's safe and that's secure for people to come. Secondly, having a space that's you're present. So the person who is working with the individual that has been traumatized needs to remain present. Give yourself permission to check in, slow the pace of what's being said. Let the person hear themselves as you hear them and work through that, and be persistent. The persistence is not forcing someone to tell their testimony. We love a good testimonial service. I'm good in Baptist from Georgia, so a good testimonial service in the middle of revival, that's not it, because we skip really fast to the praise. I want you to hear it, because here the testimony here is healing, that I have survived this and I can find life beyond it. And then as you move into this, assessment is super important. I wrote a piece in Rethink Church, which is an anthology that was created by Lakeisha Womack, and I talked about the importance of assessment in our churches. We must provide assessment. Bishop said it best. I am their pastor. Bishop is my bishop. Like, I call her, I text her, but she just said it. I'm the people who can help you. I'm the pastor. But hey, let me send you to this person, because I have just realized I can't assess that. I can't handle that. Be secure. For my clergy, it's okay to assess and realize this is beyond church space. That creates a trauma-informed care space inside of your church. I need the assessment. And then, once we do that, we can move into systems of care. Those systems of care, we can provide. Where do you need to go for this care? Do you need to go to rehab? Do you need to go to a counselor? Do you need to go somewhere and talk about medication? Is this a medical issue even? Like something going on with your thyroid? There's something that's going on? Because, so see what's going on with the mental health, with the addiction. Addictions are more than likely connected to some traumatic space, but we're trying to disengage from it. We're trying to dissociate. So, what does that look like? And then what does it look like to re-enter back and engage back into the congregation? That is where the trauma-informed care space comes. This person is going to come back in a newness of life. They don't have the same name, might have the same face, but you're going to see something different. Is the church prepared to handle what returns? Because oftentimes, like the man who was in the tombs, chained to them, when Christ said that you are healed, you fully clothed in your right mind, the community didn't want that. They put Jesus out for bringing them back a member of community in a healthy space. Can churches handle someone who comes back fully clothed and in their right mind? So that trauma-informed care for churches, that's pretty much the setup of how you would do that. And moving away from being trauma-inducing. Trauma-inducing gets us money. I hope I don't get in trouble with Beyond Gatekeepers. If we get people to get up and tell a really good story, we get a really good offering. But that also creates so much havoc inside of that person and inside our church spaces.
Can I drop one thing? And I want this as a question that I'd like to ask Marlon, if you'll allow me. But if you'll allow me, Bishop, there was a sister that was testifying. It was on Facebook for the longest time. She had received the Lord, and she had a history of prostitution. And I'm not saying it because I know it. I'm saying it because she testified and she told the people. So the more she began to talk about her history of prostitution, she became more and more graphic in her history and what it was that she used to do and what she specialized in. I'm sorry. Because it was not, she was as sincere as she could be and felt like that she was in a reasonably safe place because the people told her to give her testimony. So she did. And she went on and told the people, and she kept talking. And I can, but I will not repeat. Everything that she said was in her skill set. Let me put it that way. But I will say that the microphone kept getting further and further from her. When they started, she was talking like this. As she continued to talk, the microphone started moving like this. And she was going after the microphone. She was trying to, you remember that, Mama? She was trying to keep, like I'm talking. Where are you going with the microphone? And the people were gasping for air because you want me to give you my testimony and tell you the truth. That's what I'm going to do. And it said to me the same thing that you said. Now she's going to leave there that night twisted in a manner of speaking, because now she's going to probably get the long handle spoon treatment. Because what the people wanted her to say is that I once was blind, but now I see. I once was a prostitute, but now I'm not. Glory to God. Thank God for this pastor and these saints. Because she came in there a prostitute. She's going to go out not being a prostitute, but they never wanted her to tell her truth. I'm going to stop right there. Because I know there's either Margaret or Marlon will write a book about this. But I just wanted to kind of put it out there that it's important. I would like to know, if you allow me to ask Bishop-elect Vanessa, Marlon, what is the discussion? I know him. I know he is a survivor. I know his wife passed. I know he's raising their son and daughter and doing a great job. But I would like to know, how would he interact in conversation with a guy that was similar to, or how has he perhaps interacted in conversation with a guy that was similar to the brother that was the pastor of the church? And if I stepped on something I shouldn't step on, Bishop-elect Vanessa, forgive me, but I think I want to hear from him. What would be his counsel for that man?
Well, I might have to say, ouch. I've been actually thinking about this a lot, which is what I take from your question is, how do clergy tell the truth to one another? And how do clergy acknowledge the limits of what they know and don't know? And I first have to pause and say, frankly, I don't know. I ended our last session together kind of skeptical of this. And so, I mean, I do have testimonies, not my own, but it's kind of weird. Well, it's not weird. I was kind of the kid that grew up, my dad was a pastor, bishop, and I was the guy who was scared to do stuff because I didn't actually want people talking about my parents. But I knew guys that they was like, yo, I'm gonna grab this, I'm gonna touch that, I'm doing this tonight. And so I became the guy people would talk to, not even so much because they were guilty, but just because I became a listening ear type person. And we're so deeply embedded in a type of spiritual language that never allows us to confront the truth. And that's what we see in Lee Curtis. And so I've had people, tell me stuff. And one, they want you to swear to secrecy, so you got to be trustworthy. And they don't want to be pushed. They don't want me to say, man, what were you thinking when you did? And in fact, you know what? I'll be transparent. I'll be completely transparent here. So as you said, I lost my wife. My wife was sick. And there was a moment. So here are two things. Here's something that's true about me that seems odd because, I'm liberal progressive, but I have never been to a P-Valley performance space, right? I have never been to a strip club. I mean, I went to Morehouse. I knew I respected a lot of sex workers that worked in Magic City. I understand it. We need to regulate it and legalize it, all that. And I know that's people like, what? Yes, we need to do that. But I've never gone. So I was upset, right? So I was upset over a dispute, or just I was upset. My wife was dying. I was at a crazy ass Baptist church that was driving me crazy. I had these two little kids. And I remember in frustration, I did two things. I created a profile on Ashley Madison, and I called up specifically one of my preacher friends. And I said, let's go to the strip club, right? And rather than, the shock of it was, rather than pushing back, he was like, sure. And he just started naming all these places we could go. And he was like, why don't we get together like Thursday? And I'm the one that called him back like the next day. And I was like, man, I was just mad. Let's just go out to eat and, talk. Like I was the one that had to be the sensible one. I mean, he was like ready to be like, yeah, let's go. And, I realized that I was upset and I was frustrated and I wanted things from my wife that she wasn't even in a position to provide because she was fighting for her own life. And I think that we as clergy don't provide that level of feet on the ground to one another. And and we spiritualize. I mean, in my Church of God in Christ context, I mean, as we know, the same gender loving, and I mean, I'm not trying to put them on blast, I'm just talking about what I know. The same gender loving culture is so deep. And now here I'm talking about with the men. And I mean, they are told, if you preach against this, they're not even told, like, man, just preach against it. Like, it's not like that. Like, man, just say you don't believe in it. They're literally told, perform a struggle with yourself. And that is the self-care that you need to do. So you're constantly in this cycle where you're engaged in behavior that is often more risky and more dangerous. You feel guilt, then you get up and I don't mean perform in like theater. I mean like flagellation, like ascetic Christian practice. Like, this is the way I make it right, by preaching against it in the pulpit, by rebuking what is in my own flesh, etc. And this is a cycle that will not create the space that we need, and will not allow people to have the conversations they need to have. And so I don't know, beyond being a personal truth bearer myself, I need to learn from people like Margaret even more. And pastors and ministers need to be willing to say, that is, even with the baptism of the Holy Ghost, that, you know what, brother, you know what, sister, that God has not gifted me in that area. And I will walk with you, but let's find someone with the gifts and the expertise and the abilities to provide you the care and the intervention you need. I'll walk with you, but you cannot count on the strength that I have to do that work. We need to find persons with other strengths.
I'm going to let Margaret come back in, but thank you so much for helping the people tonight. You have blessed us. I don't know if it brought up more trauma for you, but thank you for doing that. Thank you for freeing people, because you did free people. But I wanted to say, before Margaret goes, I learned very early on in ministry to refer people. I learned that from Bishop Flunder. Like, I'm probably going to talk to you once, and like that one time, if I feel like it's beyond the scope of my capabilities as a pastor, I am going to refer you, and we have a whole department set up in our church for that. But I think that is important. Like Dr. Jamie Eady said, can the pastor's ego be accept that or put up with that? Well, if it's a good pastor, they need to be running to get chaplains, and running to get licensed clinical social workers, and running to get master social workers in their church. If they don't have any, or if they have them, start putting them to work. But okay, Margaret, I'm sorry.
I'm sitting here like I'm pointing going in. Marlon, you're a beast. Thank you for setting me up in this space. I'm glad we referenced the pastor, but I want to reference the pastor and his wife, and sit in a space of understanding that we sit in multiplicity in ourselves. The very thing that we spiritualize a particular church space is the very thing that we demonize when we don't think that it's done the way we say that it should be done. So here we are in Galatians 5. And if y'all know me, I literally infuse text and mental health. So here we are in Galatians 5, around 13th verse, where we biting folks and we devouring everybody, right? So, but then you go to a space that does not understand your spirituality or your religiosity, and guess what they do? They pathologize you. So now we're stuck in this space of shame, and nobody gets help, and we continue this cycle of harm, this cycle of pain, because we're systematic. We're built into system. The church is a system that was designed for a space of invisible healing. Go check out your Black church history. It was designed, this hush harbor was designed so that you could get healing from the physical abuse that was tearing your mind up. So what have we done? Because we've been trained in this mindset, we perpetuate it and we keep going. And so we create a trauma-inducing space that makes us feel good. And so it feels good to see this emotional wound never heal, because that's how we bring people back. That's how we keep them going. But if we could understand and see the beauty of how we sit in our ego states. Can pastors get over their ego? They can, when they can accept, not only I'm the pastor of a church, but I'm a father. Not only am I a father, but I'm sexualized. I'm a sexual being. Like, I enjoy what I do. Not only that, but I really like Nuck If You Buck. And that's the real thing for me. Like, I'm from the South. Like, that's our song. That's a motto for us. Like, it probably was playing my car today. But like, if we can embrace that multiplicity of who we are and realize that, then guess what? I get to bring my entire self in clarity and connection into the church house. And then you get to receive me in my humanity, because we're all in a human experience, versus, I'm going to beat this out of me. The Bible, and y'all correct me if I'm wrong, it never says for us to exit. It says Christ came into the world to be a part of the world. Go read John 1 real good. It didn't say that we had to exit the world in order for Christ to come in and save it. Christ came in to get into the world and wasn't received what he thought he'd be received. But then it says that if those that receive Christ, and we have the power ourselves to walk as sons and daughters of God. So if that's the case, then here's this space for our mental capacity to receive the riches of glory that take care of our inward man. And if that's it, then we can handle that mental health. We can handle the substance abuse. We can handle the things that are going, because we'll realize in assessment, this ain't the house for you right now. You need to be over at this house. But we're going to support you, undergird you. And when you come back, we're going to accept you anew to walk with you in your new space. And that takes work. But I want to throw out too, it also takes grief. A lot of people grieve change because they're used to being the center of attention and pain. What does it look like when you want to release the pain for real and release those burdens that you have let define you and walk in the greatness of who you really are?
That's excellent. Two things I want to say. Natasha Robinson said, Nuck If You Buck is a congregational hymn and a war cry. So get it. The other thing is that Margaret Conley is having a whole program, right? And it's happening soon. Margaret, tell us a little bit about that, and then I'll go to the next question, because it's around exactly what we're talking about.
So I want everybody, if they can, it's called the Healthy and Holy Summit. It's virtual. You don't have to catch a plane, get in your car, anything. All we got to do is just send you the link. And so the summit is talking about emotional wellness inside of Black church community. It is focusing on trauma-informed care for our Black church spaces. And so what we're going to have inside of all of this is talking about really moving from trauma-inducing and trauma-induced space in church to how do we now have trauma-informed care. I brought up Jessica Young Brown because she'll be closing out the summit talking about how do you set up a trauma-informed care space inside of your church. There is no excuse for Black churches not to have trauma-informed care. I know that some of our spiritual leaders are like, well, trauma-informed, that's telling people to talk about it, but we just want to move on and praise through it. No, we need to talk about it because we haven't, and because we have not. You do have people, I live in Georgia, you have people that look like us, if you Black watching, that are supporting someone who literally says, well, I used to beat her, but I don't beat her no more. And that's how he said it. Like, y'all know Herschel Walker, I don't beat her right now. He says these things and they support him. I'm in the heart of Marjorie Green land. That's where I live, so the support of this, but that's because that feels right to them, because we don't have this trauma-informed space to say, hey, that's not good that this man is saying he beat his wife and he don't beat her no more. Like, that's, no, did we find healing for him? What's going on? Is he stable? And so, that is important for us. And because of this conference that I'm having, the summit that I'm having, we have individuals that are coming, both theologians and mental health professionals, to collaborate and come together about what is trauma inducing. What does it look like to talk about Hagar in the text and realize, and I'm going to push the text tonight, maybe God didn't have a trauma-informed space for her and he sent her back into trauma. And then when she came back, she could see God at that point. We're talking about people who are going to come and talk about what does it look like for you to grieve through. Like Dr. Jamie Eddy is on here tonight. She's coming to talk about what does it look like for us to grieve through these spaces? What does it look like when you pack out your wounds and you don't have enough space when the healing comes back to you to even receive it? We're talking about that. What does it look like when we assess wrong with Dr. Irie Session? What does it look like when we assess stuff wrong and think we can heal it and we can't? We cause more damage to the person. We cause more damage to ourselves. We cause more damage to the entire body. And so coming through and talking through that. So I hope that you guys can register for the summit because we have more of this conversation in the next 2 weeks. It's October the 19th through the 23rd.
Can I just
Will we be able to put a
piggyback
link?
on one?
Can we get a link up?
It's up, and we're going to make the announcement. You have a flyer.
Okay, good.
There's a flyer that I will show during announcements.
Very good. Very good.
And then we, Natasha Robinson, put the link in. So, so it says summit registration link.
Very good. Thank you.
Now, let me just say this really quickly. I know, Marlon, you wanted to step in. I wanted to just be sure that people know what we're talking about. We are talking about Honk for Jesus, Save Your Soul, the movie by Sterling K. Brown and Regina Hall. And this is part 2, and this is some of the questions that we had in part 1 that we did not get a chance to get to. However, I see more questions coming in. I see what Dr. Jamie Eddy says, and I want to just make sure that I get to these particular questions. And so this one says, and this is by Pastor Ann Jefferson, why is the transparent conversation on sexuality the thing that is feared to bring the Black church down? Why is the transparent conversation on sexuality the thing that is feared to bring the Black church down? Now, I could start with Bishop Flunder because that's her sphere of work, but I want to start with Marlon Millner.
Thank you for putting me on the hot seat. I want to piggyback on something Margaret said on my way to directly answering that question, and hopefully this is a bridge. And it makes me think of the story in the Gospels where the disciples are interacting with the father of the son who has seizures, and they're not able to assist the son and the father, and kind of project like it's y'all are the reason we can't help you. And then Jesus comes back and addresses the problem. And then they have to come to Jesus and say, why couldn't we address that circumstance? And why couldn't we help those people? Or in, KJV, why couldn't we cast it out? This is a huge problem. And it relates to why we can't really have non-punitive conversations about sexuality, because our approach to sexuality in many Black churches is a superficial and inadequate spiritual solution, and an unwillingness to even consider, why am I not being able to be successful here? And I mean, it's just a deeply ingrained culture where we want to demonize and pathologize people who are willing to walk in the truth, while we then want to make excuses for people who want to spiritualize their way into living a lie. I mean, so it's a real paradox. And what I'm saying here is far too many people want to, disrespect and disregard my spiritual mother, Bishop Flunder, while they then, gloss and praise people who they know are living lives not of sin, but duplicity, not integrity, not honesty, right? I mean, again, I'll tell you, both my parents are, as we say, gone on and be with the Lord. I can tell you a little quick story here involving me. I started having sex in college. And when I was a freshman, I had a terrible GPA. Bishop, I had like a 1.5 my first semester at Morehouse. And my mother went off. And she was like, I know what's wrong. I know what's wrong with you. Them girls done got in your pants. And I was like, no, I'm a virgin. I haven't had sex. She's like, I don't believe you. I don't believe you. She was upset. So then I get back to a 3.5. And as the Lord would have it, I start having sex, right? Maybe those things were related. I don't know. But I wanted to live in the truth. So now my grades were good. Everybody was good. My mother was not, railing, was nothing for her to be concerned about. But since I had been so strong about, no, I'm not having sex, I'm a virgin, I initiated. I went to her and said, Mom, I have lost my virginity. I've had sex. Now, I'll never forget, we're laying in the bed together. I was laying down next to her. She's like, oh, Marlon, I'm going to have your daddy talk to you. I'm going to have your daddy talk to you. My daddy, as you can imagine, Bishop Flunder, never came and talked to me, right? Sex might as well had an extra X on the end. And I'm not going to put all my family's laundry in the street, but he should have been able to talk to me based on what I knew. He should have been able to have a conversation, but he could not bring himself. Once I honestly went to my mother of my own volition and said, I've had sex. So now you can't you can't pathologize him. He's on the honor roll. He's doing how are you going to address this? And so I know I'm kind of talking in circle here, but we've got to find a way. What do these sisters and brothers who are so invested? I mean, I love the church too, but go back to McKinley Baptist Church I pastored in Pennsylvania. They'll tell you I only said two things in the pulpit. I said, monogamy and consent. And really, I'm down to consent. But back then, when I had to pastor the church, I was like, monogamy and consent, right? And I was clear on that. So I didn't preach on fornication. I didn't preach on adultery. I didn't want to be one of those preachers that the way I kind of code to people what my things are. I guess I do believe in monogamy and consent. I was married. I enjoyed my life with my wife. So I preached on that, monogamy and consent. So I think it's a real struggle. And I wonder, what is the investment? What are we invested in? Because it's ringing, and people more and more are going to churches, getting what they need, and are just dropping this other stuff. You're not going to police, you're not going to police my sexuality. I'm clear about my sexuality. You're not going to police it. It doesn't matter what you're saying from the pulpit. You think you're in charge. You're not. You're an entertainer. You are a purveyor of goods and services. You don't actually operate with this thing, this aura of spiritual authority that you think you operate with.
Thank you, Bishop Flunder.
Lord have mercy. I'm telling you, we could go clean on till tomorrow as far as I'm concerned. So this is what I need M&M, Margaret and Marlon, to give some thought to tonight. And that is my multiple generations now of experience with the ways in which people love closets. Now we talk about how terrible it is to be closeted, right? As though people are forced into closets or secret liaisons that have to do with sex and sexuality. But I had learned over time, and they try sometimes to make these realities connected with things like music conventions, or youth congresses or something like that. But every big meeting I've ever been to is filled with closets, all kind of closets. And what's really interesting is when you talk to the staff that cleans the rooms, and it's another day we'll have that conversation, but I've had conversations with people and they're trying to make the connection between cleaning the rooms and the church. This is a church conference because they know if ethereal. Anyway, I think the heart of what it is I'm trying to say is that how do we describe the titillation that comes from you're not supposed to do it, and that makes you want to do it even more so than essentially the law that says you're not supposed to do it, but you don't want people to know. Certain people, let's be very clear. Certain people, you don't want people to know. So there's a whole, the more deep we are, the deeper the deep belly of secrecy actually exists. So the most difficult folks around human sexuality, because every time when I was coming along as a kid, holiness. When they said you got to live holy, immediately your brain said no sex. You got to live holy. Nobody said you can't cheat on your taxes. Nobody said you're not supposed to lie. Every blue moon, at least. Nobody said anything about spousal abuse or anything like that. Holiness was connected specifically, almost to the letter, to sex. And the teaching was, don't do it. And not only don't do it, don't learn how to do it well. There's nobody to teach you any beauty about sex. The only teaching was don't do it. And so when you do what Marlon did when that first time he did it, it is a crapshoot. Because nobody's really talking to you about what to do except don't do it.
I learned, Bishop. I learned.
You did. You know, I want to thank and praise the Lord. And I want to say it another way. You heard me say it. I get in trouble with Nessa every time I say it. But I tell them, you don't keep the first car you drive either. That's another thing. So you learn how to drive on the first car. Or you try to learn
how to drive on the first car. Yeah.
Well, that's a great name. But then pretty soon, God will bless you. Hallelujah. With the model that you can keep. Won't he will? But anyway, I think it's incredibly important to do something about how we talk. And the question that I have had a long time, Bishop like Vanessa, is why do we love closets? Why do we love closets? And I just from Margaret's book and some of the things that Marlon was saying tonight, some of it is because we historically have had to sneak to do everything that we've done.
And in the movie, that's kind of that was exactly what was happening with the pastor.
Exactly.
Like everything was clandestine. Everything that he did was clandestine, and he just did not want to deal with it. They didn't want to deal with the whole sexuality piece afterwards. I mean, once he hung up the phone and them saying everything is going to be all right, we done brokered a deal. He good now. What? His first mind, he gets into that gym. He pulls off his jacket so the dude can see his physique. You know what I'm saying? And he makes a pass at a dude. And the dude was like, listen.
I don't go that way with you.
No, he didn't. He was like, my boo like this. He let him know, I got a man, but it ain't going to be you.
And he got his boys are all in thug life. He got all that preaching, and the boys read him for filth in the movie because he thinks that if he take up with them in the closet, it won't cross over into what he does and who he is.
Yeah, very good.
There is the Achilles heel to me. Why can't we be honest? Because the most vitriolic preachers I know are the ones that have a key to a series of closets. I'm going to stop right there.
Margaret, you want to say something? I don't want to read
I do.
I want you to say it.
Okay, I do. I think historically we need to look back at how sex for Black people has thrived here in westernized society. We were weaponized against ourselves and used as a tool to create and produce. We became tools of capitalism. And so we became tools of mass production. So sex was never something to be enjoyed. It was to be produced. And if we did not produce from the action, we lost our lives for it. And so how can it be pleasurable at this point? I got to create closets behind it. How can it be? I have to create, because we were not invited to explore our sexuality in this moment. So then if I'm sitting in an white evangelical thought in my church, then I can't explore sex because that's wrong. Because sex is supposed to be for procreation, so now I'm closeted and I'm doing risky behaviors and I'm endangering myself and others because I got to sneak around to enjoy what I do. And not only that, I now endanger other people and I forced what I think I enjoy on somebody else. And then now we have hurt vessels who have been sexually abused, who have been traumatized with what they have seen. And so they too now don't enjoy what their bodies can do and what God gave us for pleasure, because we don't. So I believe that it needs to be deconstructed, our view of what sex, sexuality, sexual orientation, gender, all of that is, And then reconstruct it back to the understanding of this is what your body can do and what God has designed it for in a healthy way. And it does not mean to demonize it and pathologize it. It literally means my body is to be enjoyed. My body's to be explored first by me. So I know what's going on. I preach that all day. And then how do I offer it in safe space to who I want to? It should not be taken advantage of, but we know the taking advantage of that is in our DNA. That's epigenetics. I know what that does. So I think that might be, for curiosity's sake, there might be something to be feared and concerned about, that if I do get to know my body and enjoy it, what do I do with that then? Because I'm carrying the burden of being being someone that procreates. I'm supposed to produce. And that we're moving out of that. Bishop, you've invited us, even in your work, to say, why am I harming my body in which the beauty of God lives in? I heard you say that one time. Why am I beating my flesh when this is the very thing God said was Imago Dei? You got to be kidding me. And that changed my mind and made me start looking at it different.
I want to thank you so much, Margaret. You are on point. But I want to thank Carmen White Janak for saying, please take care of yourself if this conversation is triggering you. I think that that's very important. I know we've already talked an hour, but if you know that this conversation is triggering you and you need to get off, then do that. Whatever it is that you need to do to take care of yourself, please do so. We want to make sure that we recognize that. Now, the last question from last week, and then I want to get to a question that Natasha has that I think that we have to talk about. So it says, how can the church, we might have talked about some of it, but maybe not enough. How can the church manage the many scandals and the associated trauma outside of this platform, the bloggers and movies? The church remains carefully quiet. I'm going to say it again. How can the church manage the many scandals and the associated trauma outside of this platform, beyond the gatekeepers, the bloggers and movies? The church remains carefully quiet. And so, Margaret, will you start?
So, to answer that's a loaded question. Your platform has to want to do it. The church itself has to want to do it, the single entity that you walk into. And then your spiritual leaders have to want to. The fear and concern behind that is, what do I have to call out? Marlon pointed out, what do I have to call out of myself in order to bring this to a platform? Because now I'm going to have to admit some stuff inside of me. So I'm not going to talk about it. This is what we saw in the movie. And it wasn't just, I know we're focusing on the pastor in the movie, but the wife couldn't call it out either. This is a livelihood. This is who they are. This has now become a business arrangement. We got to survive this way. And we watched the other pastoring couple do that. It's a business arrangement. We're not going to talk about it. We're just going to play on top of it. And so if you really need to have this conversation inside of your church, can your spiritual leaders go within and see themselves, as I stated earlier, can they check their own ego to talk about their own wounds around sex and sexuality? And then, is there safety in the space for people to actually talk about sex and sexuality? I know who I am. I'm a same gender loving female. I'm cisgendered lesbian female. Like, I know who I am, right? But I have had to, over the last 15 years, realize I can't say that everywhere, because something's going to hurt me. And all my spaces that say that they're safe, they are not. And so, are your spaces safe enough to have that conversation? The question was loaded for me because it's generalized as if everybody want to have a conversation. They don't, because it starts to affect what comes through and what comes in connection. And a lot of our churches would rather have connection than have healing.
Hallelujah. Marlon?
The one thing I've thought about, and this is, again, most of what we're saying tonight is to say amen and I shaded things Bishop has said over the years, but for all the jumping and shouting and speaking in tongues and dancing and mourner's bench and, devotion service, we're not loved. I don't believe we think we've met a God of love, and that the people that join with us in the worship experience have met a God of love and thus can love each other. When my mom died, my mom had written a booklet. Now, my mom, again, I'm telling truths here tonight, suffered from mental illness, and she suffered from mental illness my entire life. And I would have saints come up. It is weird. I would have saints come up to me like when I was good and grown and tell me things from when I would have been too young to remember. And I would say to myself, why are they telling me this story about my mother's behavior? But my mother wrote a book. She was like, I'm going to tell the truth. And she walked that thing out. And I remember I said to someone, so there were two services because she died during the first height wave of COVID, not from COVID, but during that time. So, you know, only 50 people could get in this church. So we had a service in North Carolina, a service in Virginia, where she was from. And I said, have you read? I had never, because I was embarrassed, right? Bishop Flunder, I was embarrassed. When she wrote this booklet, she tried to recruit Diana to proofread it. And, you know, Diana was so kind and loving. I was too embarrassed to read it, but I read it after she passed. And I said, I have to preach the truth. Now, I'm going to tell you who helped me. Reverend Kendall, helped me through thinking about how to be pastoral and tell the truth. And so I preached a sermon called The Demand of Love. And I preached it from John 10 and 11, where Lazarus dies and Martha and Mary confront Jesus and say, if you had been here, my brother wouldn't have died. And Jesus knows by going there and raising Lazarus from the dead, he's putting himself in harm's way and he could die. And in fact, he does die. This leads to the unfolding of the state surveillance plot that executes him under the Roman imperial authority. And that's why I say I don't think we're loved, because if pastors get up and speak, even theologically, okay, you don't have to have trauma-informed care. You just love people and you're willing to do something because you love them. That's going to risk something. That's going to risk your reputation. That's going to risk you maybe having to share things about yourself you don't want to share. You're going to risk people judging you, shunning you. But that's what people are actually demanding. Like people are like Martha, if you had been here, I mean, she said that with her hand on her hip and some twist in her neck. Negro, if you had been here, my brother wouldn't be dead. Like, why weren't you here? And that's where we are, right? The challenge of the church to step up to this moment is people don't really believe clergy. That's why we're willing to just run around and shout. Because like, nah, dude, we know you faking with the prophecies and all that. Like, let's just get our dance on and go, you know, let's go to Denny's afterwards. We don't have really had time for you to do something because you're not really going to risk anything to do what needs to be done. So we might as well just nuck if we buck up in here and then go
to a restaurant. Why we got to go to Denny's?
I don't. I'm from the South Huddle House. I don't know.
My second son was thinking that too.
What's open at 2 o'clock in the morning? Maybe where y'all at something nice open at 2 o'clock in the morning.
Smothered.
But we don't. That's what I've been thinking about, and I've really been thinking about this. Why don't? And I mean, even the clergy who have said things to me, I don't think they want me to love them back, right? I have clergy friends now who I'm real keen at 49. And I know people say you're still young, but so many things have happened. I'm keen to tell people, I love you. And, you know, they'll be like, I love you, bro. I'm like, no. Not I love you, bruh. I love you, right? LOVYEYOU. And, you know, we're not ready to risk. We're not ready to risk. And, but that's actually what the gospel of Jesus Christ is calling you to risk everything so that people can actually have an example and an embrace of what love is in a concrete way in the world.
Oh, Lord. I think we need some church fans, funeral home fans, to kind of get us through this part. But I have to say, so here's the Flunderism. The Flunderism says, first of all, we are all different, each of us. We have our own idiosyncratic realities, our own vestiges of how we were brought up, our own realities in terms of our genes, what really is in us. Some things we understand, some things there's 2 or 3 generations before us. We don't know where that came from. I think the truth of it is we are all different. And for all of us, intimacy is different. It's not cookie cutter, no matter what. And sexuality is different, right? But I think the part of it that gets me is it's as though sex stands alone from the rest of life in learning, as though it's only perfunctory, as though somehow or other some supernatural gate has been opened because you either are found by somebody else or you find yourself, if you understand what I'm saying. Something as though it's not human. It's something that we've crossed over into a great spiritual chasm where we don't know what to do. And I have said many, and because our bodies call for it, it seems like it has to be of the devil because can just come on in and just suck up all the atmosphere. You understand what I'm saying? It's like, Jesus, I don't know where my mind went. Well, it's because because our genetics are asking us to reproduce. And whether or not we are same gender loving or trans or are heterosexual in terms of how, in the narrowness of how we see this as people in this country, it's seen broader in other countries. But the truth is that when we see it that way, when it consumes us, we don't realize that it is our genetic pattern. What is in us is to make our species reproduce and continue. And your puppy gets worked up, and a cow gets worked up, and a bird gets worked up because that's what our genetics call for. But we're supposed to be brighter than that, such that on the human side, we should be able to make decisions, should we need to, about what we're going to do and understanding what is driving us. But even more so, how do we contain this genetic reality? As people who say that we love God and people who say that we love people, I think we have to apply to this the love principle. And I suggest that because I've said it in a post, I think yesterday or the day before, that sex will find its holy place in your life, not based on the criteria that somebody else sets for you, but it will find its holy place if you have embraced things like love, fairness, justice, righteousness, peace, not abusing power. If you do the prima facie duties of someone who is a healer, sex will find a holy place in your life that won't require a closet. And I'm sincere about that, whether you blessing yourself or being blessed, whichever way this thing goes, it will find a holy place if we have chosen to do justice, to do justly, and to love mercy, and to walk humbly. We don't have to sit sex aside and then do justice over here. It wants to come with the rest of the package. But that will never happen if we try to say, and if you don't get it like I get it, you're not getting it right. It's not mine to judge any more than it is yours to judge me. And when Margaret and Marlon, doctors, when people have judged, oftentimes Shirley and I, over the years, over the almost 40 years and a hot minute that we have been together, they try to figure us out because there's an anomaly. The anomaly is the absence of lying. That's really the anomaly. That's it. I mean, I tell you, it's not rocket science. I'm not fixing to lie. Why am I going to do that? I'm a grown woman. I have a relationship with God. I ain't scared of none of y'all. Everybody that's listening on tonight, I need you to run tell somebody. We don't live in a spirit of fear, but of power and love and a sound mind. Well, why is it that? And I'm not saying that to people that haven't lasted 40 years. That's not who I'm talking to. I'm talking to everybody when I say it. You're grown. I have to deal with the consequences of my decisions. I can't pretend like there won't be consequences in my decisions. And so I had to leave my whole denomination. Do I regret it? Oh, no. Do I still love them? You better believe I do. You better believe that a good B3 organ and a drum set can send me running around my own house. You better listen to me. I just love it. But to some degree, I declare it is their loss and not mine. Because they need a voice like mine and yours. They need a voice like ours to speak back into those environments. Sex will find its holy place when we have prioritized internally and externally those prima facie duties that you all have talked about here so beautifully tonight. What does God require? Do justice, do justly, love mercy, walk humbly before God. Yes and amen. Thank you so much for everything that you've said. Thank you for giving me a time to have a rant, Bishop Lebanon.
Thank you. This is the last question. I want to ask it. I believe Natasha Robinson is asking this question. What does trauma-informed care in church look like for a congregation that has both the offender and the offended in the same worship experience? Okay, Margaret.
That happens every week. Some of our churches, the pulpit is the offender. And we are forced to sit there and listen to them be the man and woman of God with the voice that's given. And so how do we do this? Again, we've said it repeatedly tonight. The truth has to be stated about how we manage in the church. For other pieces of this in a trauma-informed care church, and I've seen these churches and how they operate. I've seen 2 of them do this in Georgia. In particular spaces, the offender and the person who has been offended, they have come to agreement that the offender would leave that space. Just so happened that one of the churches, the pastor was actually a therapist, and they found a church home for the offender that had minimal issue for the offender. So that was one, and it's a rare thing. You're gonna find a pastor to walk another person to another church for safety, but also ensure that the person that was offended was safe as well. So that is one model. I watched it work really well and made sure that both individuals from a spiritual care space were found in safety and were found in a space that they were loved. As Marlon said, love is the key here. We have to look at that as the top of the model, how love heals, how compassion shows up. And so that is how that worked. But the bigger issue, that question was stumping me when I was seeing it, was what happens when the pulpit won't call itself out. And that's where a lot of our brothers and sisters are sitting, is that the pulpit is the offender, whether it has kept the secret, it has silenced that which is offended, or whether it has actually been the physical cause of the offense in a sexual matter. And so until that, I think that's addressed, that power for cult, Shell for cult talked about, until that power dynamic is addressed to where that's not an okay thing to do, to lord over someone and their body parts, then we won't see justice, I think, in the dynamics of the fullness of that question.
Anybody else want to make a comment, Marlon or Bishop? No. I want to be able to say, Marlon, do you have something to say?
You know, I would just say, when I think about trauma-informed care, we have to recognize that one positive way to think about this is it's an opportunity to unleash all types of gifts in a congregation that aren't just pulpit-centered, right? So if you think about trauma-informed care, for example, with victims of shootings, often what happens is, in communities with high rates of gun violence, you have these so-called trauma hospitals. These trauma hospitals are hospitals that have the medical expertise that you could be shot 10 times and still not die, So they can repair your muscles, your flesh, your bones, your skull, your skeleton, etc. But they weren't wrapping around, okay, well, okay, now the person's disabled in a wheelchair, and how are they going to get disability, or where are they going to live? Are they going to go back into the same neighborhood, same block where the incident? So trauma informed care begins to say we can't just surgically repair the person. And so the ministry has to say, we can't just pray and fast about this. We understand that, it reminds me in a positive story, something that Bishop Jackie McCullough did years ago. She was at a midwinter convention of the Pentecostal Assemblies of the World, and they were up, jumping up and down, shouting because they were in Atlanta, and some homeless guys had gotten filled with the Holy Ghost that night. And they brought the homeless guys up on stage. We were at the Atlanta Civic Center. And when she got up to preach, I had never seen anybody in Pentecostalism do this. I was blown away. She was like, I saw how you all were celebrating moments ago. These men got baptized in the Holy Ghost, and you got them staying at the hotel. But what's going to happen to them on Monday? I was stunned that she dared. Like, that was a trauma-informed perspective to literally assert that the baptism of the Holy Ghost was not going to magically get them off the street and turn everything around, right? And so that's where we have to be. If a congregation is going to be informed, not only does it require significant humility from the pulpit, because the pulpit can be the place of offense or the place that covers offense. The pulpit also has to be brought down to the level of the people, because all sorts of gifts and abilities, social workers, affordable housing counselors, credit counselors, job workforce development people. It's amazing how these people will sit in the churches that are just pulpit driven, and people will never know of their anointing and gifting and ability and experience. But if ministers can begin to say, because a truly spirit-filled church is a church where everybody has a gift, that we're going to unleash everyone's gifts and abilities when people need care, then it won't be one form of assistance, one form of giftedness. Certainly, we will see love in its manifold expressions.
That blessed my whole self. And begin to see the holiness and the righteousness and the gifts that have been diminished. People have to hang those skills at the door. If you can't sing, if you can't play an instrument, if you can't preach, you have to leave everything else at the door. So true. We need to make holy the things that bring people life. That's a whole different time to talk, Bishop-elect Vanessa.
It is another time to talk, but not only do we need to make it holy, they need to be ordainable calls. But that's a whole other thing as well. That they need to be ordainable calls.
Absolutely.
Right? Because if I don't have the skill set as a licensed clinical social worker, because that's what we need. My God, in our churches, we need license, that we need them. They need to be in the pulpit, in the congregation, and anywhere else we can find them, because there are all kinds of things happening within our congregation, whether it's mental and emotional health, or victim abuse from some kind of sexual trauma. We can go on and on about the list of things, drug addiction, that we as pastors are not equipped for. Now, some of us from the inner city, we know a few things about a few things, but everybody have their training. They don't train you in seminary for something. They don't train you in seminary for crack. They don't train you in seminary for meth.
They don't.
It's a new thing. They don't tell you nothing about that. And then for a while, you running around trying to find, wasn't even no meth clinics out for a while. Right. And then they started becoming this whole thing. It was a white thing. Now it became a gay thing. And now everybody was using it. And so where are our people going to be able to go? Because that can't be prayed away.
That's right. And it is holy work.
It's holy work. It's good work.
Holy work. It blesses God.
Come on. Yeah. Our denominations have to start doing better. This is holy work. That's an ordainable call to be a licensed clinical social worker, or a master social worker, or whatever you are, a chaplain. These are ordainable calls. And people need to be getting these people in their church ASAP. So that's my thing.
And a spirit-filled grant writer.
Yes, but somebody put attorneys. Yes, we need attorneys. Come on now.
I feel bad. I want to clock in because I'm really, this is not pitching my conference, but everything happens in our psyche and our body keeps the score, right? That's what's been written by the scholars. That's what they said. So what happens when we don't have that? Marlon said something that made me want to like jump out of my seat, cut my camera off, and shout. Because when you bring the pulpit, because we've elevated it so high into a space that looks like Acts chapter 2, beyond the house situation, when they had all things in common, then you understand the need for a financial social worker. I saw one on here tonight. You understand the need for a birth doula and a death doula. You understand the need for affordable housing individuals to come in. You understand, because your pastor is finna shout you happy, but can't get you home from church. Matter of fact, can't get you to the corner you came off of because you might not have a house. We don't know. So what happens when the pulpit realizes that it needs to come into a space of all things in common? That for me is the goal of being healthy and holy, because the desire is that we should all prosper and be in good health, and that does not equal your wallet often.
That's right. It's not all about your money.
There's T-Fam in the house. T-Fam in the house.
One last comment. Sherry Brown Jackson says chaplains are the new pastors. We are in the trenches doing the work that pastors do not do and are often unprepared to do that work. Ashe. Jamie Edie Chisholm said, Dr. Jamie Edie Chisholm said, deaf doulas, lost navigation specialists. I like that. I like that name. Lost navigation specialist. There are people who are experts in certain things. Like, to be a pastor, you don't have to be an expert in everything. You don't have to know everything. But you do need to have some qualified people around you that know what you don't know. So,
and some people who keep an eye on you.
Yeah, and some people that keep an eye on me.
There has to be a way for us to create, and I say this, I've said it for years, people within our congregations that we are accountable to. Do not drink the Kool-Aid, leaders, and come away from here thinking that you can make a really proper judgment at times about yourself. Have somebody close enough to you that can have your front and your back, and respect the fact that that opportunity is there. So what you can't see, someone else can see. And we demonstrate that kind of humility with and among our people will learn to demonstrate that kind of humility with and among themselves. Yeah.
This is good. Thomas Jermaine says, stop building brands and build people or quit. He said, girl, they sure be trying to be the jack of all trades, Pastor. That's what it is. That's how it is. Listen, we appreciate this conversation tonight. We were talking about Honk for Jesus, Save Your Soul. And there were so many things that fell down into that movie. We appreciate how you've supported us for the last couple of weeks as we talked about this. And we are thankful for Marlon Millner. Thank you so much. And we'll thank you for Margaret L. Conley. I am going to go to some announcements. Thank you, Bishop Flunder. And Bishop Flunder will give the first announcement, and then we'll go on. Thank you so much.
God bless you, beloved. What an incredible conversation. And thank you for this incredibly, beautifully moderated conversation, Bishop-elect Vanessa, and our guest, Dr. Margaret, Dr. Millner. How wonderful. I want to say to those of you that are listening, it's just getting better and better. My old folks used to say gooder and gooder. And I want to encourage you, if you have not, then be a blessing. When you receive something, it's important, I think, to be a blessing to the place, to the location, to a restaurant that really blesses you, and you're blessed and filled. You want to leave a tip. I want to encourage you tonight. Support Beyond the Gatekeepers. Do something tangible. In fact, do something perhaps a little bit more than what you intended to give, because God has blessed you and blessed us beyond most of our wildest imaginations. Support this broadcast by sending a donation via Cash App to $TFAM Annual or to PayPal www.paypal.me/TFAMJustice. Help us to continue to grow and expand and grow and expand these opportunities for truth and power and family. God bless you, we pray.
Thank you, Bullet and Flight Radio. We appreciate you. And so let the conversation commence. Dr. Margaret Conley is presenting Healthy and Holy Summit, Emotional Wellness and Spirituality in the Black Church. She is inviting you to join them on October 19th through the 23rd. You can go to www.healthyholyconversations.org. That's www.healthyholyconversations.org. Several guests, several clinicians, several theologians are going to be on this, and we hope that you will join them on October 19th through October 23rd. You can register if you go to that website. Again, it is www.healthyholyconversations.org. And we have Courtney A. Brown, PhD and author. The book is A Life-Changing Journey Through the Life of Mephibosheth. You will find strength to recover, grace for your journey, and comfort right where you are. Copies are available now. Please go to www.beyondthewallsoutreach.org. That's www.beyondthewalls with an S, outreach.org. Rim Fellowship United Church of Christ, where their senior pastor is Bishop-elect Sonia E. Williams, is inviting you to join them on Tuesday night for Bible study, Wednesday for morning prayer, Children's Church. For more information, visit their website. Please go to www.rematl.org. That's www.rematl.org for information if you want to give and sow into this ministry. You can find them on Cash App as well. Their Cash App is $, Rem Church. You can find them on Facebook as well as YouTube. Antonio Mattier, lifestyle realtor, says donate to your church, give to your church while accomplishing your goal of home ownership. Lifestyle Global Properties will donate 10% of the commission earned from your real estate transaction to your choice of COR or TFAM in your name when you utilize their brokerage to purchase or sell a property, residential or commercial in California or Georgia. And you could go to his website at www.antoniomattier.com. That's www.antoniomattier.com. Lifestyle Properties. And we have the Healing Place Apothecary. Nubian Flunder is the founder, and her mother is our presiding bishop. You can go to www.thp, which stands for the Healing Place Apothecary.com. All one word, www.thpapothecary.com. You can find things for your skin: black soap, daily greens, raw shea souffle, rose water, daily fruit, root oil. Please go to the website and make a purchase. And you will find Sky Michelle's Teas and Things, where a kid is the boss. Go to www.skymichelle.com. She has a collection of t-shirts. You can follow her on Facebook and or Instagram at I am Sky Michelle. And this month is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. You can find shirts on that website if you want to support Breast Cancer Awareness Month and make a purchase of one of those t-shirts. Thank you for your support on all of these businesses. Please support Black businesses. And we have a documentary, Flip of the Coin. The producer is Sue A. Webley, and she is looking for, well, let me tell you how the shutdown turned success for Black COVID era entrepreneurs. She is calling for interviews, seeking Black entrepreneurs who started their business during the pandemic or whose business flourished during this time, willing to share their story on film. She's interviewing now through Saturday, October the 8th. If you are interested, please give her a call at 917-403-2160 or sue at cara-solutions.com, and you can find that information. Again, she's looking to interview people, how the shutdown turned it into success for Black COVID era entrepreneurs. Please, if you can tell that story or know someone that can tell that story, please have them contact Sue A. Webley. If you want to advertise with Beyond the Gatekeepers, you can. Please email us at beyondthegatekeepersshow@gmail.com. That's beyondthegatekeepersshow@gmail.com. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Thank you for supporting what we do. We will see you next week. God bless you and have a great night.
Thank you.